You ever wonder what happened to guys who, you see them blow up and play at a near all-star level early in their careers, but then they fall off so quickly and drastically that you almost completely forget about them. And now they've become an afterthought. Some guys like Colin Sexton have proved recently that he can still play at a high level when given the opportunity. But the opportunity is only there when someone else gets injured, and his team doesn't have as much faith in him compared to his younger days. When he gets mentioned, you think, wow, wasn't he so good before? What in the world happened? Why is he seen as just a role player now? In this video, I want to take a look at 3 former NBA players who were quickly rising up the ranks on the verge of stardom, but instead of jumping to the next level, most teams gave up on them. Nowadays, barely anyone thinks about them, and they'll never reach that level we thought they would. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and let's get started. Remember when the Cleveland Cavaliers were rebuilding and still finding the right players to build around? Well, for a while there, it looked like Colin Sexton was that guy. In his 3rd season, at the age of 21 or 22, he averaged over 24 points a game and made a massive jump in each season since he arrived. As the 8th overall pick, he was everything the Cavs thought he would be, and his rapid rise into borderline all-star status was a pleasant surprise in the midst of so many losses. I still remember there were debates back then on who you'd prefer to build a team around, Colin Sexton or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think we know the answer now. Individually, Sexton was fantastic. Though he made some common mistakes that all young guards do, Sexton had the it factor. Colin Sexton, and his mentality was that of a player yearning to be the best in the world. Unfortunately, after that spectacular 3rd season, things started to unravel. First, over the summer, Sexton and the Cavs failed to agree on a contract extension, which was okay. The plan was to let him become a restricted free agent the year after, so the Cavs can match whatever deal he gets. So, the next season begins, and something bad happens. Within the first month, Sexton suffered a season-ending knee injury. In his absence, the Cavs won 44 games. It was their best season since LeBron James left, and so the Cavs started to hesitate. With the emergence of Darius Garland and the Cavs' big men, they were such a better team without Sexton. In the 2022 offseason, they had a tough decision to make. Sexton and his agent wanted a fairly reasonable contract, 4 years, $80 million. That's reasonable for a guy of his talents. However, with him sitting out almost the entire season with an injury, the Cavs could not make this commitment. So they only offered him a measly 3-year, $40 million deal, just under $14 million per year. He felt insulted. The reason wasn't just his injury, though. In his absence, Darius Garland became the leader of the team, and the Cavs offered him a gargantuan $200 million deal. It was a signal that he was going to be the future of this franchise, not Sexton. They didn't want to commit to another small, ball-dominant guard like him, preferring to build their team around Garland's talents instead. Chris Fedor of Cleveland Media stated, "Some members of the organization would take Caris LeVert over Colin because of the size, because of the length, because of the versatility that he can bring on the defensive end of the floor." Sexton was obviously not pleased with how his contract negotiations went down, but at the end, it didn't matter, because the Cavs engaged in a massive blockbuster deal to acquire Donovan Mitchell, sending Sexton to Utah. At this point, Sexton's career was in limbo. Despite signing a lucrative deal with the Jazz, he came off the bench. He was no longer the primary option, or even the secondary option. It seems like his days of being the man on the team are over, and thus his dreams of being an all-star gone. Despite proving he can still put up a string of great games, it's never consistent and always comes in spurts. It's just, we expected him to be a multiple-time all-star by now. TJ Warren. All those years in Phoenix during the dark ages, it was a time the franchise would love to forget. There were some good moments, I guess. Devin Booker scored 70 points, they got the #1 draft pick for the first time in the history of their franchise, and that's about it. Overshadowed in all this misery, TJ Warren was a young small forward who looked incredibly promising. He was a very efficient scorer, usually the second option on the team behind Booker, and he put up near 20-point per game seasons. It's easy to shoot and score a lot on a bad team, but to do it as efficiently as he did was impressive, considering how bad most of the roster was. While his game wasn't anything extraordinary, it was his all-around scoring potential that really stood out. In fact, he came into the league with no three-point game whatsoever, but he made such rapid progress in this department. Warren went from being a non-shooter to suddenly a 40% three-point shooter. Even after a trade to the Pacers, he recorded the best season he's ever had, and even led the team in scoring en route to the playoffs. For a moment there, Warren looked like he could be a major piece of the Pacers for the foreseeable future. Sadly, in late 2020, he suffered what appeared to be a minor stress fracture on his foot. It was not minor, after all. It soon turned out to be a major, crippling injury that he would never recover from. This devastating foot fracture forced him to miss nearly 2 entire seasons, and when he returned, he was nowhere close to being the player he once was. Warren also narrowly missed out on his window to get a huge payday from the Pacers. I guess they got lucky that they didn't need to pay him, cause if they dropped the bag on TJ Warren, it would have been a disaster. But I do feel bad he wasn't able to reap the benefits of his production. He worked so hard to come back, and when he finally did after years of rehab, ready to make his debut on the Brooklyn Nets, this is what he had to say. Just being away from the game that you've been doing for 20 plus years, to have that be taken away from you was definitely an eye-opener. It made me just look at myself in the mirror and realize that one day, the ball could stop bouncing. There's a lot of emotions behind the scenes, and just to be able to talk to you guys about the debut means so much to me. I wonder, how could his career have developed if not for that major foot injury? He was progressing so quickly in his early days, and you can tell his immense dedication for the game that's given him so much. At this point of his career, he's tried to make a comeback, and even returned to Phoenix and appeared briefly in the 2023 playoffs. Little did we know, that was most likely the last NBA game of his career. As of this video, Warren has yet to appear in the 2023-24 season. His NBA career is almost certainly over. Christian Wood. The story of Christian Wood is both admirable and disappointing. He went from a complete nobody, completely undrafted in 2015, to become a powerhouse of a big man in Houston, to now on the brink of irrelevance, desperately holding on to his NBA life. There's a reason when he became a free agent, it took over 2 months for a team to pick him up. The Lakers offered him a measly 2-year, $5.7 million deal. Such a small amount of money for a guy who averaged like 18 points and 9 rebounds a game over the span of 3 seasons. Back then, he represented everything we thought we wanted from a modern-day big man. Christian Wood was athletic, fast, can jump through the building, and he was a fantastic three-point shooter. Very few players in the NBA could dive to the rim like a freak of nature, but also pop out and hit the three. He was a menace in the pick and roll and pick and pop, and the only saving grace on the Rockets during those post-Harden years. As time went on, however, Wood's weaknesses were more apparent. Despite his offensive versatility, he was probably the worst defender and the worst screen setter the NBA has ever seen. The dude had the skills on offense, but none of the intangibles. You think about his time in Dallas and you wonder, why was Dwight Powell starting over Christian Wood? If you look at his numbers on paper, he looks quite good, and we were hoping he'd progress in other aspects of his game, and so did the Mavs. His weaknesses were far too severe, and it runs deeper than just a lack of effort. He just lacks the awareness and defensive IQ to do anything. He doesn't rotate properly, he's out of position a lot, he makes boneheaded mistakes over and over again. The Mavs got fed up with him. They say defense is like 90% effort, but Christian Wood, he's the rare case of a guy who just does not understand it. It doesn't help that he's undersized as well. At 6'8" and very skinny, he doesn't have the size of a big either. For a guy who looked like a very prominent young player, his career has plunged. Now averaging 7 points a game, some nights not even playing at all. It's upsetting to see a guy of his offensive talent wasted like this, but in this day and age, you need to play good defense as a big man, or else you'll never see the floor. Thank you everyone so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on these 3 players. Do you think in an alternate universe, they could have become stars, or were their careers destined to be like this? I hope you all enjoyed the video, and of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.